One of the things that I'm learning from obviously working a day job again and getting up very early now to write is that I need to temper my expectations a bit. Today I ended up writing for about 30 minutes. It was a good quality 30 minutes for sure. Towards the end, though, I started noticing my writing was starting to slip. I was starting to rely a lot on supportive sentences. This is obviously a revision to a new section, so what I'm writing are new words. And I was relying upon supportive sentences and just sentences that were not working. So basically what I did was I ended up stopping once I started noticing that and just called it a day. I've talked before about how when you are writing, there's a certain finite point when your quality of writing goes from good to bad, and it's mostly from fatigue. It's from being just mentally taxed with what you're doing. Often, the creative well, so to speak, has been dried up. So for me, that's what happened today, and I just basically ended the session early. I don't believe in writing through that sort of stuff. I don't think someone should write, the first 30 minutes, hour, 90 minutes, whatever it is, of good stuff, and then double that time where you have, an hour of good writing and then an hour of poor writing, but your story's a little bit further along. I don't believe in that. I think you should just stop at the first hour when the quality starts to dip. And it's difficult. It's difficult to recognize when that happens. Often people will use that as an excuse for procrastination. That can happen, especially very, very early, where they write for 5 minutes, and all of a sudden the sentence right after the one they just wrote is not as good, and they go, oh, my writing's not as good now as it was this past sentence. All right, I gotta stop now for the day because it's my writing's going downhill. That's not what I'm referring to, obviously. Yeah, things you'll write are going to have some variation there in terms of quality. But after a time, you can start to recognize when your work as a whole is just going downhill and you need to stop at that point. So it takes time to figure that out. It takes time to sort of develop the ability to recognize that. But with that, obviously, with this being, the third day of this 3 a.m. thing that I'm doing, also the third day at the new job, I'm starting to realize, though, that maybe 30 minutes is all I'm going to be doing now. Maybe 30 minutes is all I will get done during the work week. Perhaps that is it. 30 minutes of writing. Hold on. 30 minutes of writing, 30 minutes of just, hey, sitting basically at the desk, turning out words, and if it turns out to be just, a few paragraphs, a page, what is it, or whatever it might be, being okay with that. Because I'm not on the sabbatical now. I don't have the whole day to write. I don't have the luxury of getting, copious hours of extra sleep and extra time to go for walks in between. I can't write for 30 minutes, an hour, go for a walk, eat some food, come back and write again. It just, my time is more limited now, unfortunately. So tempering my expectations a little bit, where just, 30 minutes, and that's going to maybe need to be enough. And obviously pushes back my project deadlines a little bit. But I'm in kind of a luxurious position right now. I'm in a position where the story is far enough along that even at 30 minutes a day and then, a bit more work perhaps on the weekends, I'll still have this thing done by the end of the year, I surmise. So it's a bit luxurious in that sense. I'm in a position basically where I don't necessarily need to worry so much if my deadline is the end of the year, which, yeah, it is. I wanted to get done before that, but at this point, I'm cool at the end of the year. Well, then I'm fine. I'm also in a good position in the sense that a lot of what I'm doing is revisions. And so this section I'm writing right now is new, but this tends to be the exception rather than the rule, which I know is kind of weird to say that because the past 2 things I've done now have been revision sections to old sections. But this probably is going to be I think, the end of just the general restructuring of chapters. At this point, I think most of everything else is going to be more line edits at this point. Most of the chapters tend to look good, so I'm just tackling the big ones now. So with focusing on revision, I'm in a bit of a luxurious spot, though, because revision doesn't necessarily take a lot of creativity. It takes a keen eye, and you got to be awake. And obviously 3 a.m. is maybe a little bit tough to, kind of recognize some of that stuff. Your mind and eyes tend to skim certain things. But I think I'm in a bit of a luxurious position right now where I can, 30 minutes of just sentence level work. Yeah, that's pretty good progress. I mean, you can get a lot done with 30 minutes of just checking sentences and making sure they sound correct. So I'm in a good position there, and that's probably, I guess, the main, kind of luxury in that sense, is that revising something at a sentence level doesn't take as much creativity because, the quality of your work isn't going to diminish substantially, or at least it shouldn't. You might let certain sentences slide that maybe you're more willing to correct and make changes to. If you're a bit more dialed in, perhaps there are some oversights and things like that, basically. But for the most part, you can get away a bit more with sentence level corrections than you can with new words in terms of dealing with like fatigue and things like that. Other luxury too is that you can get more done. It's much easier to correct, spend 30 minutes correcting words or correcting sentences. You'll get much further, than you will spending 30 minutes writing new words. It's just because everything's already there and you're already trying to fix it. You already have a game plan. It's much easier just to handle it that way. So that is the other luxury in a sense. But with that, I'm just going to keep going forward here. And yeah, if it comes down to just tempering my expectations, fine. They're tempered. Fine. I will accept that, and I will just keep churning out what I'm doing at a kind of a slower pace and just kind of dealing with the reality of the situation. I tend to say that my biggest thing is I can't let myself down. That's the biggest thing. Like you ultimately as a writer are beholden only to you and your own deadlines, even external ones. Even if a publisher or an agent gives you like a deadline for revisions or corrections or something like that, ultimately it's you are the ultimate authority, right? You are the one that decides if you want to hear that. You could actually miss those deadlines. There are consequences, obviously, but you could miss those deadlines. And if you're happy doing that, if you're okay with that, then more power to you. In much the same way that, that's how I'm approaching it right now, where, hey, I'm satisfied if I can get 30 minutes done today. I'll consider that a win for myself, just with my schedule right now and how crazy it is. I mean, my God, I'm getting up at 3. I'm in bed by like 7 nowadays at night. It's new worlds. This new thing is like a new world for me. It's quite different and quite shocking, but I'm happy and I'm satisfied, and that's ultimately what matters. So here's till tomorrow, and hopefully again tomorrow I'll be able to get a little bit more done. I'm still churning out that new section there. It's probably going to take me till maybe the middle of next week perhaps to get that new section done, but once I'm hoping I can pick up a bit more momentum. But if not, hey, just showing up with the keyboard at this point is a win right now.